The main question they kept asking, and because they knew I spoke Arabic, are you related to the Samud convoy?
Okay, wow.
Is this actually all deception to go and support the Samud convoy? And so actually, no, this is March to Gaza,
Yeah.
which is predominantly a mixture of Muslims, non-Muslims from across the world. I think 40 countries, 4,000 people from 40 countries. There was Americans there was ex-US veterans there, all sorts of people.
Yeah.
There was Jewish rabbis there was literally everyone you can imagine turned up to March to Gaza.
Assalamu
Salam.
alaikum. Welcome to the cave. May Allah reward you for those attending in person and those watching online for our circle. And today's topic is quite an important one. And we've got an outside speaker to basically, I'll be interviewing him. It's Omer Hussein. Assalamu
Walaikum
alaikum. Thanks
salam.
for coming down.
No problem.
So I've got a list of questions for you.
Go for
Hopefully,
it.
we'll run through them.
Inshallah.
So the topic is on March for Gaza. If I'm honest, I actually don't know much about this. All I heard was recently that a protest going on in
Yeah.
people traveling to Egypt from abroad.
Yeah.
Protest there. I'd heard on the news about people from Algeria traveling along
Yeah.
or Morocco to
Yeah,
the
that's right.
Egypt to the Rafah crossing border to try and break the so-called blockade.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about the March for Gaza.
Yeah. So the March for Gaza happened in June.
Yes.
Essentially, it was a global movement to try and break the siege on Gaza.
Yes.
There was something that happened at the same time called the Samud convoy, which is what you're referring to, which was from North Africa.
Yeah.
And they just happened to be taking place at the same time, but they were organized by two different parties or organizations. The whole concept of March for Gaza was that after over 20 months of genocide, no one was stopping the mass murder and starvation of the people of Gaza. And they felt that they had to take things into their own hands, actions into their own hands, and they decided to march to Gaza. So it's probably the first time in history, actually, that people from across the world have gathered in one place to march to break a siege. And it's civilians without any arms, without any weapons, trying to break the siege through pure pressure on the regimes. But what actually unfolded was that the Egyptian regime was the first line of defense for the occupation in Palestine. And they're the ones who stopped this. So many people were picked up in the streets. Some people were arrested or beaten up as they approached the checkpoints, making their way to Gaza. No one actually got anywhere near Gaza, by the way.
Wow.
So most people were either picked up in Cairo or were stopped in Ismailia, where it was on their way to the Sinai.
Okay. And in terms of, mentioned about security presence and the regime was trying to prevent being an obstacle for people trying to, as you said, break the siege.
Yeah.
What I've heard is from students that from studying there that have come from they've gone from the West, gone to, let's say, Cairo to study Arabic. Since October the 7th, I've heard news from them that there's been an increased security presence of police and even students with actual visas being nabbed on the streets, being detained, and then being deported. And they have a visa of the ones that risk it without. So what was it like, the security presence, when you went there?
I mean, the security presence was huge when we got there because obviously they were ready for this march to Gaza. So some people were deported at the airport.
Yes.
They didn't even make it past the airport. We, alhamdulillah, got through, me and the brother that went. But what happened is we arrived on a Thursday.
Yes.
The main congregation was going to happen on a Friday, and this was going to be the start of the march to Gaza. So we took a short walk around Cairo in the morning. We went near Tahrir Square, and a lot of people will know Tahrir Square is where the first revolution started in 2011. So there was a huge presence in Tahrir Square. So we noticed that the presence was abnormal. So we started walking away at that point, because as you try to approach Tahrir Square, they tell you to move away, not photo, not take videos, nothing. Just move away. They're obviously very concerned that something could kick off in Cairo. So as we were pushed away from Tahrir Square, some plainclothes security services people stopped us and said, "What are you doing in Cairo?" And it's like, okay, this is gonna, we're obviously concerned that this is not going to go down the way we were hoping. And the questioning became a little bit more aggressive, and then they asked for our phones. And this isn't the UK, you don't have to quote any laws, you can just take the phone. So unfortunately, as they took the phones and the questioning became more intrusive, they realized that we were there for March Gaza. We tried to avoid giving them that information initially. by giving very generic answers. We're
Yes.
coming to visit Egypt.
Yes.
We're coming to see Cairo, which is all
Yes.
true. But then they started going into a lot more detail. Are you here for the March for Gaza? What's your real intentions, etc. And then they got our phones. They saw some of the communication that was related to the march. So they took us to one corner just off Tahrir Square, and they literally started pulling off people from the streets. But it just shows you how many people were there for March to Gaza. There was an Irish guy, Palestinian Canadian, French Algerian, all sorts of people from every walk of life was being detained in that location.
You flew into Cairo?
We flew into Cairo, yeah.
Not other cities?
No. So we came straight into Cairo.
It's risky.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that was the advice that was given. Just come to Cairo.
Yeah.
And initially the plans were they were going to get everyone onto a bus or buses from Cairo to the checkpoint.
Yes.
But then they realized the security presence was huge. So they said, make your own way. We didn't even get that far. Then we were put onto a bus about maybe an hour and a half later and taken back to the airport and held in a cell there. It was like it's not like a cell with bars and things, but it was like a holding cell within the airport location.
You said so how many?
So in that room, initially it was about maybe 15 of us from that location in Cairo, maybe 15, 20. And there was women as well that were held in a separate cell. And it was just before, about Salat al-Jum'ah. So we actually prayed Salat al-Jum'ah in that holding cell. A Palestinian brother from Manchester gave a really beautiful khutbah actually about just a reminder that obviously these sacrifices are very small. We should remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us at this time and the people of Gaza will not be abandoned. Very, very powerful at that time. And as the day went on, people were being pulled out from obviously across Cairo, people from Al-Azhar and all over the place. So by the end of the day before we were finally released, there was probably about 60, 70 people in that room. Majority were from Turkey. But there were literally non-Muslims from Greece, Ireland, Muslims from Malaysia, France, Belgium, UK, all over the place. It literally was like United Nations of Muslims and non-Muslims actually that had come to march for Gaza.
And once you was in the cell, at some point did they take you out and question you
They
further?
questioned everyone, a few times. They were very interested if there was any link between the March for Gaza and the Samud convoy. That was their biggest worry. Because don't forget, what they're most concerned about is if the people of Egypt rise up. They're not, I mean, I think they're 4,000 people, a few thousand people from North Africa, you're not going to be able to break through just in terms of your sheer presence. But if the Egyptian people rise up, that was a big concern for them. So that's why they stopped the Samud convoy at the border with Libya. They never even got beyond Libya, so people don't know that. But hardly a few people got through the airport for the Samud convoy, but the majority of people were stopped there. So the main question they kept asking, and because they knew I spoke Arabic, are you related to the Samud convoy? Is this actually all deception to go and support the Samud convoy? And so actually, no, this is March to Gaza, which is predominantly a mixture of Muslims, non-Muslims from across the world. I think 40 countries, 4,000 people from 40 countries. There was Americans there, there was ex-US veterans there, all sorts of people. There was Jewish rabbis there, there was literally everyone you can imagine turned up to March to Gaza. So they really wanted to ensure that this wasn't trying to rile up or move the Egyptian people.
So how long was you in cell?
It was, I think we were there for about 6 hours, 7 hours. So it wasn't too long. Ultimately, they said, look, we're going to release you, but it's on the basis that the March to Gaza is not going to happen, which we, to be completely open with you, I never thought the March to Gaza was going to happen. I went there with the intention of being there to support this action, but also to use it to bring attention to the fact that the Egyptian regime is complicit in the genocide of Gaza. I interviewed a US veteran in Jordan when I was there in April. Her name is Josephine Gilbao. She's actually gone viral on social media. She was the one, if people remember, she was dressed in her full military uniform and she went to Congress and she accounted them for committing genocide against the people of Gaza. It's a clip that was gone, millions of views. And in Jordan, I said to her, she goes, oh, we need to march to Gaza there. I said, who do you think is going to stop you? Do you think the Israelis are going to stop you marching to Gaza? I said, it's going to be the Egyptians and the Jordanians who stop you marching to Gaza. And she goes, well, we have to try. And I said, we should try. But actually, what we need to do is expose the real Israeli Defense Force. And unfortunately, the Israeli Defense Force is actually the Arab regimes.
So which regimes, the surrounding nations are you talking about?
Look, Egypt and Jordan have the biggest responsibility. They border this occupation. Egypt borders Gaza. Jordan has the longest border with the occupation of Palestine. Then there's other countries have responsibility. Turkey has a huge military force, huge economic power in the region, hasn't done anything. Actually, it continues to trade with the occupation. We know that oil still flows through it. Pakistan, even though it's far away, hasn't taken any credible steps to put pressure on the occupation. So look, this is a complicity that runs across the Muslim world. But if you want to pinpoint where that complicity is most, I think is clearly Egypt and Jordan and the surrounding region.
Okay. It might be a strange question, but would you say Iran has a role in?
So there's a lot of politics around Iran, but I would just, it's funny enough, on Thursday night, we just arrived. At Fajr time, we see the news that Israel has bombed Iran. So literally that happened on the march to Gaza. So before we even started our march, this news broke out in obviously across the world. And what unfolded in the next 12 days was actually something very interesting, because we're always told that this Israeli occupation is invincible. But actually within 12 days, it looked very vulnerable. And that was from a country that's 1,000 kilometers away, and they were able to strike at the heart of the occupation. So they struck Tel Aviv, they struck Haifa, important, Mossad, the Mossad center in Tel Aviv, the oil refinery in Haifa. Many important locations were struck from 1,000 kilometers away. But yet you've got Jordan, you've got Egypt, you've got Turkey, and they've got armed forces in the region haven't lifted a finger. So what Iran did in terms of that engagement is it proved that this occupation is extremely vulnerable. But what's happened is that these regimes are what keep it propped up. They ensure that it's fully defended, that its borders are always secure. So I think that's what people should take away from the 12-day encounter with Iran.
Okay. And just coming back to your objective of going there was to interview and support.
So we had a backup plan when we went there. So me and the brother, we said, look, we know that the march is not going to happen. Because you have to be politically aware. I mean, Muslims shouldn't be naive. You don't go to Egypt and think Sisi is going to let you march to Gaza. I mean, this is a man who's been arresting his own people for speaking in support of Palestine. And the same in Jordan. Abdullah is arresting pro-Palestinian voices in Jordan. And that happened just in the last week. So we knew that wasn't going to happen. So what was the real objective is to use that platform to bring attention to the real problem. That the issue of Palestine will not be resolved until we liberate ourselves from the regimes in the region. So we did many videos at the Nile, the pyramids, the military museum in Cairo, Salah ad-Din's castle. So we used that opportunity to really raise our voices for the people of Palestine and for the real solution.
Do you have your own
we
channel?
had very good interactions.
Do you have your own channel?
I've got Instagram and LinkedIn, which is a strange platform, but that's where my main following is.
Because perhaps we could share your videos on our own page. And
we can do that.
First, I haven't seen much coverage since it happened. I've been hoping to see coverage from people on the ground that went, but I haven't seen anything. Why is that?
So the Egyptian regime obviously really did clamp down hard. So people were beaten up quite badly. That got to the Ismailia checkpoint. We obviously didn't get that far. There was one viral video that I'm sure a lot of you saw of a nurse who was calling upon the Muslim armies to move. Did anyone see them? And he was crying and he was saying to them, "Are these not your Muslim brothers and sisters?" That guy was on the March to Gaza. So I think it has actually got a lot further. But ultimately, there was no organization that had a single voice that was trying to promote one message. It was everyone going there to show solidarity. So actually on the flight back, subhanAllah, there was a woman sitting behind us. And then I could hear her saying, "Oh, this is," I don't want to mention her name online, but she goes, "Oh, this is so-and-so, and I've been at the March to Gaza." And I was like totally taken aback. It was like a middle-class English woman on the plane that she went there. Imagine a non-Muslim that felt so passionate about this cause that they left their home and traveled to Egypt to march to Gaza. And then as we were talking to her, another Irish woman walks past, and then a brother from originally Kashmiri brother on the plane as well. SubhanAllah, and then we just realized there was several people on that same plane that were all there for March to Gaza. So I think it did get out, the word, but there wasn't a central message that was being promoted or kind of carried to the world. What you saw was just individual people, due to their frustration, wanting to do something.
And in terms of the way forward, it's been coming up to 2 years since October the 7th, and Ummah have tried everything, and even non-Muslims have got involved, and now they're even calling out boycotting, calling to our government, and people tried everything.
Yeah.
And now come to this as well, just marching for Gaza still hasn't worked. What's the way forward for the Ummah now?
So I think let's take stock of where we are. The occupation, Israeli occupation, and the US and its supporters are trying to obviously ethnically cleanse Gaza. That's clear. Let's not make any. There's nothing about hostages here. There's nothing about destroying the resistance. They want to destroy Gaza. What stopped them doing that is the resistance there. So they've been able to stand steadfast for this long, which is something that wasn't in their calculations. They thought they were going to be able to overwhelm them. They haven't been able to do that. But the reality is, we're not talking about just remaining steadfast in Gaza. How do you remove this occupation? That's the question that we need to be asking ourselves. Boycotting, of course, no one wants to give money to a company or an organization that's complicit in genocide. No one wants to, promote or help any country that is supporting the genocide. So we want to expose the Western countries. We want to expose the regimes that are doing this. But without actual military force, you're not going to be able to liberate Palestine. That's clear. And there's a big difference between this resistance in Gaza against this occupation and actually uprooting an occupation of the whole land of Palestine, which has now gone on for over 77 years.
So, and in terms of looking at the West, what they're trying to broker, like Trump, the deal he's trying to broker between Hamas and Israel, or the West, UK, France now calling on two-state solutions. What does that mean? What does it actually really mean for Palestinians?
So I think their words mean nothing anymore. Yeah. So they talk about ceasefire. I think they said the ceasefire was imminent about a month ago, and they've said that many times before. They do want to get rid of the resistance, and I think we have to follow the events that occurred over the last few days. Many Western leaders came out saying that we want to recognize a Palestinian state. But there's something very toxic and very poisonous behind that statement. What they're really saying is we want to recognize this occupation, this Jewish entity in this land of Palestine. That's what they're saying, because if you recognize this Palestinian state, you're saying, I recognize the Israeli state. And the Israeli state is as a colonial settler occupation that is there to ensure that they control the majority of Palestine, and they give the scraps of some of the West Bank and some of Gaza. Now, how much even of Gaza are they going to give? I mean, we're talking many years ago, it was about 20% the West Bank and Gaza, and they were going to give that as a Palestinian state. You've got settlements, you've got so many checkpoints within the West Bank. What kind of state is that? Yeah. They don't control their own seaports, they don't control their own air, they don't have any air power, nothing. So they're completely under the occupation of Israel. So they're going to say, look, we're going to give you this state, but that means you have to recognize this Israeli state, this occupation. So their intentions are really, what they want to do now is find a solution, or this is what some of these Western countries are doing, to actually ensure that this occupation continues. By saying, look, we're going to give you this tiny state, and you have to be pleased with it, and the rest of this land will be occupied, and the problem of Al-Aqsa will never be solved, i.e. it will still be under their occupation. So as Muslims, I think we need to be aware of that, and we need to stand against it. Yeah. This is just another form of Zionism. They call it like liberal Zionism, where they want to still control everything they have, but they're saying people like Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and Smotrich, they're extremists. But ultimately, they still believe in the same objective, which is the occupation of this land. And the other thing that the Arab regimes recently did is they made an announcement, as well as some of the Muslim countries, for the resistance to disarm. And they're saying that you should hand over your weapons and actually allow for the Palestinian Authority to take over Gaza. The Palestinian Authority have been killing Muslims in the West Bank. So they have been used by the Israeli occupation to put down any opposition to the Israeli occupation. So what they're really doing is trying to come up with a final solution where this land becomes fully occupied, and they give little scraps to this man called Mahmoud Abbas from the Palestinian Authority, and this becomes a new Palestinian state.
It's true what you say about the West, especially that they play a very fine line. Public opinion is against. It's no doubt that Zionism in the West has a very bad image at the moment. And in take the recent actions of the UK government, they're very smart in their words. They always sanction individuals, but never the state, as you said. Yeah, so that's a recognition. We actually we recognize Israel as, and we want it to exist. Individuals, always individuals or settlers in the West Bank that are expanding, etc. What would you think the future danger of Israel now? It's occupied parts of South Lebanon
Yeah.
and the Golan Heights. It's gone further than the Golan Heights in Syria, with and the recent conflict between the Syrian government and some of the tribes. I forgot their name.
The Druze?
The Druze. That's it. Sorry, yes. Conflict now they've expanded into that area as well, taking they claim that it's a buffer zone.
Yeah.
What would you say the future is Israel trying to expand its land?
You know, they don't even hide it.
Yeah.
So if anyone looks at the Israeli flag, you know, it's between the Nile and the Euphrates.
Yeah.
The Nile in Egypt and Euphrates in Iraq. That's their actual stated objective.
Yeah.
That's what the land of, what they believe is their promised land. Yeah. So Palestine is just the beginning. They want to take Jordan, parts of Saudi, parts of Egypt, obviously Syria, Lebanon. Also, it's a much bigger, greater Israel. It's called. They even, some of the IDF even wear that on their uniforms. I'm sure you've seen that map of Greater Israel. So they're not hiding it. They're actually quite open.
Yeah.
We're the ones who are saying, oh, no, that's not what they want. They're taking, as you say, parts of Lebanon, parts of Syria. They've taken the whole of Palestine. Why wouldn't they want to do take the rest? Yeah. When they know they've got complicit Muslim regimes who are willing to sell out everything, then absolutely that's part of their longer term objectives. So I think that we need to be really clear. They are very, very open about their objectives, but we're the ones who are waiting for it to take place. And then we're going to cry and say, oh, subhanAllah, look, they did take more land. Or they did actually finally attack Egypt and Jordan. They're obviously doing it in stages. So they're not picking on Egypt and Jordan now. They're doing Lebanon and Syria now. But if they strengthen those areas and control those areas, why do you not think that they were trying to take Jordan? In fact, in 1968, they tried to take part of Jordan. It was a famous battle, the Battle of Karama. It was only because of a sincere Jordanian general that they were defeated there. But they wanted to take parts of Jordan. And they took the Sinai in the past, in the previous wars in the 50s. So all the evidence is there to say that they want to have a greater Israel. So, you know, there's a famous Arabic saying, I was eaten the day that the white bull was eaten. And the whole meaning of this saying is that what's happening in the Muslim world at the moment is we're almost all waiting our turn. So this bull, this white bull, when it was eaten, then it was basically the sign that all the other bulls were going to be eaten. But instead of actually taking action at that time, we keep saying, oh, no, they've eaten the white bull today. Maybe tomorrow they'll eat the red bull. Tomorrow they'll eat the black bull. And everyone's waiting for their turn. And that's literally what's happened in that region. Everyone is just waiting for their turn to be occupied. When now, if they acted in a unified way, they could stop this occupation. But unfortunately, we're occupied anyway. Who said the Muslim world is not occupied? Who said Egypt is not occupied? A brother in Egypt summed it up perfectly. He goes, do not think that the son of America, Sisi, has any interest for the people of Gaza. And that's the reality. He was installed there to keep Egypt as a loyal, subservient state. He's not there to protect the Egyptian people or to respond to the cries of the Palestinians. That's our situation.
And in going forward, so take for example Egypt, people clearly have, in terms of the Egyptians, have a strong sentiment towards supporting Palestinians and liberating Palestine. What's the way forward now?
Yeah, so I sense that a lot. I had a lot of discussions with Egyptians there, and many times they were very positive about the Palestinian cause. Some of them were very open. They said, Hukkam, the rulers are the ones who have abandoned the people of Gaza. We don't want to do this. We want to support the people of Gaza. Someone openly said, as I said, the son of America, Sisi. And this is strange to hear in Egypt. I mean, it shows you how much anger and frustration there is. So look, the people in these countries, we have to remember, it's not so easy just to say, speak out. Because believe me, you speak out, you're in jail, and Allah A'lam what happens to you. They arrest someone with a British passport, they're going to be a lot more careful about what they do with you. But if you're an Egyptian, you hear people disappearing. We saw what happened when Bashar was removed from Syria. We saw the prisons, how they were full of sincere people who were only praying in the masjid. That's all their crime was. They didn't do anything. They only prayed in the masjid, but the intelligence made reports about them and said, this person prays in the masjid regularly, this person has a beard, this person does so-and-so. So imagine the one who politically speaks out. You've got no chance. So the reality is, it's very difficult for the Egyptian, the Jordanian people to bring change by themselves. There is a school of thought that says they should just go out on the street and demand change. I actually don't think that's necessarily the way this is going to happen. You have to remember that the Egyptian people did go out on the street in 2011, and Mubarak did leave his position. Then they held elections, and Mursi, Allah yarhamu, was elected and then imprisoned and killed. What happened? Within a few years, Sisi came back even with more treachery and more violence against his own people. He killed 1,000 people, more than 1,000 people in one day. Mubarak didn't even kill a few hundred over 3 weeks. In one day, Sisi showed them, look, I can do more than Mubarak. So what you really need is people who have power to bring that change. It can't be just people demanding change without a leadership, without authority, without an army. The problem that we have now is that the armed forces are not in line with the wishes of the Ummah. They're not doing what the Ummah demands and wishes of them. But they are also from the Ummah. They are the sons, the fathers, the brothers, the uncles of people in the Ummah. And in fact, I can give you many examples on LinkedIn, for example. I have lots of interactions, even with army officers who comment on my posts positively. I've had that from Turkey, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from Egypt, from Jordan, some even messaging me. So the reality is there are good people in these armed forces, but they're structured in such a way to maintain the status quo. We need to use our voices to get that message through to them and to the influentials, to the thinkers, to the journalists, to the scholars. For example, I was at a demonstration outside the Egyptian embassy on Saturday. There was an Azhari imam or sheikh who gave a talk. There were activists who gave talks. That went viral on many social media platforms. Many people have seen this young Egyptian brother who locked the embassy gates of the Egyptian embassy in Amsterdam, in one of the cities in Holland. I forget which city now. But that went viral. And what we're seeing is that there is now more focus on the regimes that are complicit in this genocide than simply just commenting about how vile and evil the occupation is. Because what we need to understand is, how do you stop it? We're not here just to give reports about the war crimes being committed. So I think our focus needs to shift. And that shift will only happen when we realize we're part of a global ummah that is currently not independent.
If I understood what you just said there, so the call, the global call from the people needs to be in tandem with actual material support. And
absolutely,
as I understand, you mean the armies.
The armies are the problem and the solution at the same time. Simple. And if we go back to the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, he understood that you need people of power. He understood that. He understood that authority does not come without people that can protect you. So when he used to go seeking the support from the tribes, he used to ask them, are you men of war? Can you fight? Can you protect me against the Arabs and against the Persians and against the Romans? And if they were unsure about that, or if they said that they have a treaty with the Persians and they can't protect them against them, he would refuse their support, because he knew that it was vital that you protect this state, this authority. It can't be one that's dependent upon a foreign entity. It can't be one that will not defend itself if it came under attack. And the reality is not that we don't have the capability, we don't have the willpower, we don't have, the will or the intention to do what we need to do as an ummah at the moment. So by raising this call, by putting that pressure on, we're trying to appeal to those people and those people who influence them, because it's not just the army as a separate entity. The army is part of the society. So imagine when journalists start speaking about this, when influencers start speaking about this, when imams and scholars start speaking about this, when the individuals start speaking about this, then you start creating a change in society. That it can't be, we're just going to globally get, go onto the streets. Without leadership, without the support of that army, they'll crush it. And that's what they did in many of these uprisings in the Muslim world.
So, before we open up for Q&A, would you like to make any last closing remarks?
I think, look, I would just say we are in a unique time in history. Never has the West been so exposed for their support of genocide and war crimes. I mean, I think this has become evident. So many non-Muslims have even started asking questions. How have we become so complicit in the mass murder of a civilian population of children? This is something that they can't fathom. And many Muslims have started waking up to the fact that we have reached this position because we have no leadership, no authority. So I think for us, we need to not just stop at Gaza. We need to realize this is interconnected. Sudan is being starved. There's cities in Darfur now that have been starved, have been sieged since April 2024. In fact, I saw a video from Gaza saying we need to break the siege on Darfur. I thought, subhanAllah, the brothers in Gaza under his siege, they say we need to break it. That's the concept of ummah. The Rohingya Muslims are still being genocided. We talk about genocide. The Rohingya Muslims have been genocided. It's not like they're at the final stages of the genocide. So a population of about 2 million people, Muslims in Rakhine State in Burma, 2/3 are ethnically cleansed. That's happened. They've been forced out. 1 million of them are in Bangladesh and Cox's Bazar. So in reality, this is an interconnected problem. We need to raise our game. We need to be calling for the right solutions and understand that, boycotting charity, making dua, fine. But don't stop there. If you stop there, you'll really have sold out the people of Gaza from the real solution.
Thank you. Before we open Q&A, Maghrib start. We're going to pray Maghrib about 9 o'clock in 20 minutes. So if anyone has any comments or questions, I'd like to